Set your mind on fire. Hello and welcome to the Modern Web Designer's YouTube channel. This is going to be a project video covering HTML and CSS. Now we've got the basics videos, which you can go to my YouTube channel, just click my name down there, and go to the channel, and we've got basics videos if you want to cover HTML and CSS first, but if you just want to jump in, that's fine too. This one's going to be pretty basic. So we're going to go through real quick, and we're going to cover the HTML side of the page that you see right here. And then we're going to cover the CSS. So this is just a really basic introduction to how to write HTML and CSS. So I'm going to be using Text Wrangler, which is made by Barebones Software. You can go here to this URL here and go over and get that if you want that, if you're on a Mac. However, if you're on a PC, you can't run Text Wrangler, so there's Notepad++, which is a great alternative to Text Wrangler. There's a number of other options you have. You can actually just run out of TextEdit on Mac or Notepad on PC, and those will work fine too. You don't have to have any special software to write the code that we're writing today. So I'm going to go ahead and switch over. I've got two files created here. This is my basic setup. I'll include the cat.jpg, or you can include any cat.jpg that you want. I'm going to throw that in an image folder. This is going to be kind of the root of our document, is this whole folder here. I've got an index.html in the root and a style.css under the CSS folder. So that's just kind of a basic how you set up your projects usually when you're writing HTML and CSS. So in Text Wrangler, I've got both my HTML or index.html and style.css. I've got them open here, but there's nothing inside of them. So we're going to start kind of from scratch. So the first thing that we need to do with any HTML document is we need to tell the browser that it's an HTML document. So that's real easy. It's just doctype HTML. Real simple. And that's just a little thing you can memorize. Don't really need to know anything behind it. Really all it does is it tells the browser, hey, you're looking at HTML. And this is the HTML5 syntax. There's an HTML 4.1 syntax too, but anymore it's not really worth knowing. At least in my opinion. I'm sure there's going to be people on this channel that disagree with me, but that's fine. Okay, so we'll open up our HTML tag, and then we'll jump in, and remember we have our two sections. We have a head section, whoops, and we have a body section. So let me type those out real quick. So remember to close every tag that you open, and I like to just open them up and space them out first. So first, let's go into the head. We need to look at what we need to include in the file, and we also need to set our title because that's also in the head section. So let's give it a title. You can put anything in here. I'm going to do a picture of a cat, and then close off the tag. Whoops, make sure you close it all the way. Then we're going to do a link. Now, if you remember, we've got links have relationships, which is the rel tag, and this link is going to be a style sheet, so the relationship is style sheet, and the file is this style.css, which is in css/style.css. So we need to do href, equals css/style.css. Real easy. And that's it for the head. That's everything you need for this. So next we're going to go into the body. And remember we have three sections typically within any HTML document. So we've got a header. We're going to do a section. I'm not going to do multiple sections in this one because we really only need the one. And that terminology gets confusing because we have sections and then we have header and footer sections. But I think you guys get it. So now we've got our three sections set up, and let's go into the header here. Now I'm going to do something that's kind of weird with the HTML here. Everything that I want to be centered, I'm going to put in a div. Now this div is going to have a class that is going to be defined in CSS, and it's going to tell it to center it. So first things first, we're going to open up that div class, and we're going to call this class wrapper. And that's a name you'll get very used to as you get into CSS and style stuff, and especially with some of your JavaScript applications, it requires stuff like that too. But inside the header, all we have is a heading 1, and you can put anything in that. I'm going to say check out this picture of a cat, and then we'll close off the tag. Always close off your tag. So now our section, which is kind of the main text behind this thing, we're also going to open up this div class equals wrapper. And now some people would ask the question, why don't we just open up this div over the entire thing? And we'll see that when we get into the CSS, why I wouldn't do that. And there's other reasons to not include a wrapper over the entire thing too. But for this particular HTML document, we want the wrapper to be individual. We want 3 different wrappers. So inside the wrapper, we're going to do a div with an ID this time, because there's only going to be one of these, and it's going to be called cat pic. Alright, and this is going to include both our picture and our caption for the picture. So, make sure you close off your quotes. Alright. So inside of the cat pic, like I said, we're going to have an image, which an image tag is just img, and you need to define a source. So in this case, our source is in img/cat.jpg. And then we need an alternate text. So if for whatever reason the image can't load, it needs to provide alternate text for the user. It's just best practices type of thing. So that's defined as alt equals, and you can put whatever in there, a picture of a cat. And that won't show up unless the image does not show up for whatever reason. So then I'm going to do a span, and this is just another tag that defines a section of text. It's not like a div in that it has height and width and stuff like that. This is really just selecting a section of text. So span ID equals caption, and let's close it off, and then I'll type in it. Alright, and we can put whatever caption. This is a cat. He is old. Which is very true once you see the picture of the cat. It's really kind of gross, in my opinion. Now, I don't really like cats. If you're a cat person, you might like this cat. So, in the footer, we got to open up our wrapper. So, class equals, and you could have copied and pasted this, but I could have too, but whatever. It's not that much to write. Alright, and now another span, and this is going to be our copy. So we're going to do ID equals copy, so our copyright. And by no means do you have to name that copy or copyright or anything related to copyright. The span's ID could be Bill, and that would be fine. That's just for reference later in our CSS. Whoops. And now I'm going to do a special character. This and copy is the copyright sign. So copyright sign 2013, I'm going to put the modern web designer. Alright. And so now we've actually, this is it. This is the HTML. Really, really simple. But let's save that, and then we'll go over here. This is the finished product, but now under tutorial, I believe. This is what it looks like as of right now in our code. We haven't styled anything, so everything's pushed off to the left. Nothing's the right format. The picture's too big. We don't have that nice little box around it. So we need to go in and we need to style it. So let's switch over here. And we linked this CSS document, but there's nothing in it. So now we can actually just go right in and type, and it'll be there. So first things first, we need to set up, I always like to include this little snippet here, body, comma, HTML, and this is from writing Canvas code that I do this, but I just kind of find it a good practice. You can set the body and HTML tags, give them no margin and no padding, because by default in a lot of browsers they do. So that's a real quick thing that you can do. Next, let's go on to the header here. Now, notice I'm defining the header, but I'm not defining anything leading up to it. So this will go to all headers in the entire document. Now, in this document, there's only one, But should there be others, say in this section here, it would catch those too. So the header, I'm going to make it a 60-point font. So font size 60px. And then font family, I want it to be sans serif fonts. And usually what I do for sans serif fonts is Helvetica, Arial, and then just sans serif. Alright. Now I'm going to select the header, the section, and the footer. So each of our individual sections here in HTML. Up here, I want certain things to happen with this section, this section, this section. I want everything to be centered, and I also want the sections to go the full width. So let's select header, footer, section. And now notice I don't have any dot, no hashtag, so these are the actual tags, header, footer, and section. And we'll open up our curly braces, and I'm going to say width 100%, and then text align center. So let's see what we've got right now. Alright, so it's starting to take shape. You can see we have sans serif fonts for this header here. Everything else is still serif fonts. And then this is still off, it's too big, and this doesn't go below it, so we're going to cover that. But yeah, we've got a full width, and then we got centered text in the middle of it. Switch over here. So, this dot wrapper, right? That's our class wrapper. We want to set it to a width, and now we'll talk about two different types of widths here. First, let's set it to 960 pixels. Right, and margin 0 auto. This just centers it. That's something that you need to memorize. It centers a div. Divs don't naturally center. You can say float left or float right, but to center it, do margin 0 auto. It'll center it in the center of its parent, if that makes sense. So width 960px, and for right now, let's do a border 1px solid black, and I'm just doing that so you guys can see what's going on here. So you can see this is a 960 pixel width, so it's no longer 100% of the width. And now when we rescale this, when we hit that 960 pixels, it stops and it stays there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go with a different type of width. Instead of being a straight pixel width, let's do a percentage. So say 90%, right? Refresh the page. Alright, it's a little bit wider, but look what happens when we resize. It automatically resizes with it. Now this is really nice when you think about the different screens that you're going to be displaying on. So say you're just displaying for phones. Well, the phone's width is maybe like this. So that width is automatically updated for a phone. Whereas if it was that 960px, that would still be off here, and you would have to scroll horizontally in order to get the full page. But this updates for, say, like tablets, desktops, and phones. So that's just a really nice kind of thing to keep in mind when you're setting your widths. Alright, let's move on. Just some kind of housekeeping stuff here with the footer. I want to make sure that it jumps down a little bit just to make it kind of look more like a footer. Let's do a margin top. So pushing down from the top. Let's do 50 pixels. Alright. And now the copyright within the footer. And you can write this either just copy, or you can write it footer copy. I like to just write it that way. Either one of those works though. The other one's just more specific. With IDs, you don't typically have to be that specific unless you're using multiple of the same ID, which is a problem anyway. So let's say font size, let's set it to 10 pixels, and then the color, so the color of the text, set it to AAA, which that's a hex value, and what I've done here is I've done the short form of a hex value. This is the same as that. So you can either, and I think that's 6 there, yeah. You can either have 6 of the same character or 3 of the same character, it's the same thing. And let's see, let's go ahead and set up this cat picture, right? So cat pic. And now remember, this is the wrapper around the cat picture. It's not the image itself. So the cat picture, we want to make sure has a maximum width. And I'm going to do 300 pixels in this case. And this is one of those times when you do want a pixel width. Just because you don't want the image to resize to stretch. So a max width of 300 pixels. Let's give it, we're going to do this kind of, if we go back to that HTML, CSS. See, it's got this kind of Polaroid border around it. What I'm actually going to do is I'm going to duplicate that tab. Whoops. Got a little guy in front of that. So we can go back. So we want to give it that Polaroid look with this kind of shadow behind it. And how we do that is we give it a 10 pixel border of white, and then we'll put a shadow under that, which is a new thing that we didn't talk about in any of the other stuff. So the border is real simple. It's just 10px. Actually, it's 10px solid white. Sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself here. And then we'll do box shadow. Now, box shadow's values, how you set it up is the distance x, the distance y. So I'm doing 0, 0, so I want it to be centered. Then the kind of the blur, it's the size. And then you can set the spread, but you don't have to. And then the color. So I'm going to do 10 pixels size, and then black. Alright, so now we've got, if we refresh it here, you can see it back there. Now our image hasn't resized. Keep that in mind. But you can see we've got this kind of shadow thing going on. And I'm going to take off that border for those divs as well. So like I said, this isn't the image itself. This is the div. So in order to make the image resize, we need to give it a max width as well. So let's do cat pic image. So any image tag under cat pic, we're going to give it the max width attribute of 300 pixels, just like its parent. So refresh, and now we're back to size. And how I like to do this is display block just in case. So say that file, this image file, was 100 pixels wide, right? Then this text would be up alongside it. If you set it to display block, it's going to break the line after the picture. It's going to break the line, and then the text will display down here. So make sure if you're setting something that might be dynamic, make sure you kind of adjust your code for all cases. So now we're all set up that way. We've got our cat pic set up here. Now we'll notice this is off to the left, like I was talking about. By default, without that margin 0 auto, these divs are going to be off to the left. I'm going to just jump over here. So that div that contains all of that, we're going to say margin 0 auto. All right. And that's our center code. And now it centers it. So we've actually got it pretty close here. Actually, we've got it exact down to, except I did change the size here of this text. And I changed the font too. So you can say font size. And actually, we can select that. Instead of just doing cat pic, we can jump into the caption itself, which I believe was an ID. Should have been. So caption, the ID of caption. So that's that span here in index.html. Span ID equals caption. And we'll say font dash size. Let's set it to 10 pixels. And then we'll say font dash family. Again, Helvetica. Whoops. Arial. Sans. Whoops. There we go. Serif. And I think that'll work even though it's capitalized. Yes, it will. Alright. So there we go. That's actually exact right there. Really basic stuff. Selecting via IDs like this, via classes like this, and then via tags like this. That's the most important thing to pull out of this, is remembering those three things. And then your different attributes. You'll pick up on attributes as you go. Make sure you just pull up different resources for that. You can search the internet for different CSS attributes. CSStricks.com is awesome. Go over there, check out some of their stuff. As you work with CSS, you'll learn more of those and just have them in the back of your brain. That's something you can't really just teach in a lesson. You really have to use them over and over and over again. Again, I'm sorry about this cat picture. It is really gross. But that's the basics of HTML and CSS. If you have any questions, put them in the comments below. If you would subscribe to my videos, that would be awesome. There's going to be more like this coming up. We're going to get into JavaScript, we're going to get into PHP, and then we're going to get into different applications like Photoshop. So, if you would subscribe again, that would be awesome. Thanks for watching.